Oh, hey, it's Carrie again with another episode of Farm Your Yard. And I'm just out here at our lovely Veterans Urban Farm, just kind of doing some spring gardening, doing a little weeding. I'm also doing a little thinning of these radishes that you see right here. Thinning is one of my favorite gardening tasks. Do you thin your garden? You might not. If you don't, I hope to convince you in today's video about how important it is to thin your garden. So stay tuned. Thinning is not everybody's favorite gardening task, but it really is an important one that is often overlooked by gardeners. In today's video, we're going to go over why you should thin, when you should thin, because timing is really important in this task. And I'm also going to take you back to my garden at home to show you how you should thin your own garden. In this case, I'm going to demonstrate thinning some carrot seedlings. So look at these rows of radishes right here. This is one of the first things we planted out here at the Veterans Urban Farm. And we plant these with a seeder because we have hundreds and hundreds of feet that we're seeding. And the seeder is fairly precise, but it does kind of drop more seeds here and there. And so we still have to utilize our volunteer pool to help us thin. So if you come down and get a closer look with me, I can point out how you can see the radishes are maturing at different rates simply because they're growing at different spacing. Look at these radishes. These radishes were all planted on the same day and cared for in the exact same manner. But look at this. They kind of are all over the place as far as what their size is. Some, like this one over here, is almost at the size that we harvest them. But then just, 2 inches down, there's like this little bunch that hardly have any roots. And the only difference is the spacing between the individual plants. And the reason the spacing is affecting how the plants are growing is because we have not thinned them yet. And some of these clumps where the seeder dropped too many seeds are growing too close together to give their roots the adequate amount of space that they need, which is why I have to come in with the help of some of our volunteers to thin these plants out so that we maximize the amount of good radishes we have. Now, in my own backyard garden, it's not nearly big enough to use a seeder, and I just use my own 2 hands. But the thing about using your own 2 hands to direct seeds into your garden is I, as a human, am even less precise. So I have to do a lot of thinning in my own garden. So why don't you come back to my house and I'll show you what I'm working with. Hey, now we're back in my own garden and we're going to thin some of my carrots that I seeded a few weeks ago now with the help of my kitty. But before we get started, I want to kind of talk about carrot seed and maybe just seed in general. So like, look how tiny the seed is. Like, I've been a gardener for a decade and it still gets me how like a carrot comes from such a tiny seed. If you watch these videos, you know that carrots are direct seeded, they can't be transplanted. And you also know that we recommend people plant 20% extra when they seed, just to make up for like germination or like ants eating things and all that kind of thing. Combining like the small seed with the overseeding that you should do, plus just like the imprecise nature of just like dropping seeds in a little trench, means that oftentimes as a backyard gardener, I have to do a lot of thinning because it's just not precise and I'm trying to overdo it to begin with. So when these carrots germinated like 3 weeks ago, I realized that once again, I overseeded and that I needed to thin. And I waited until the carrots were this stage. So right now they have their cotyledons, which are the 2 leaves that pop out right when they germinate from the soil. And then they have 1 to maybe 2 true leaves that are just coming out. So the carrots are still really young. And this is the perfect time to thin them. It's the perfect time to thin them because the root system is not super robust yet. It's pretty much just put down some like vertical roots down into the soil. They haven't moved out horizontally yet. So it's an easier time to like pull them out of the soil without disturbing their neighbors too much. The reason why their timing is so important when you thin is because if a plant is cramped for too long in its life, it kind of shuts off some like metabolic processes. And if you thin it, then later on, it's just like those processes are shut off and it's just not going to get bigger. It just like has given up. So you want to do it when the plant is still young, like right now. If you're not familiar with the concept of thinning, firstly, thinning is taking some plants out of the garden bed or the row that you've planted them in, while leaving others and just making more space in between the individual plants. So what I do when I thin, especially if I'm not certain the right spacing, is I get my seed packet out. So this is the seed packet that these young seeds came in, or that these seedlings came from. And like I went over in another video, the seed packet has a lot of really good information. One of the things is the ideal spacing in between plants in a row. So for these carrots, the packet says to thin seedlings to 3/4 to 2 inches apart. My finger is 1 inch in diameter, just shy of 1 inch. So what I'm gonna do is space the seedlings 1 finger apart. So I'm gonna set my seed packet aside. I try to do this after it rains, so that the soil is wet. If it hasn't rained in a little while, I just water them really thoroughly. The really wet soil helps the young roots just like pull out of the soil much easier. So I'm gonna just start over here. So these two are not a finger width apart. So I'm gonna just tug on the tinier one and pull it right out of the ground. Boom, so there's one. And then I'm gonna move down the row. Those two are 1 finger's width apart, so then I'm going to move down and then I'm going to thin. There's a clump of 2 right here, and then that's good spacing. So I'm just going to pull them out by the roots at the correct spacing all the way down the row. I'll do one more. Beautiful. Now this gives these individual carrot seedlings enough room for both the roots to develop nice big taproots, which is what we want with carrots, and also nice big leafy greens that can maximize the photosynthetic potential of the plant to then channel energy into making nice big roots. So it just gives more space up top and below, which is what the plants need. If you watch these videos, you know that like I really harp on just growing healthy vegetables as the first line of defense against pests and disease and all that stuff. So you don't have to use a lot of sprays. Well, growing things at adequate spacing is one of like the top tricks of growing healthy produce, because the adequate spacing lets them develop nice robust root systems, nice stocky above ground plants, which like I said maximizes photosynthesis. It also facilitates air circulation around the plants, which reduces fungal infection, disease, just like wet leaves, which a lot of plants don't like. Having them growing at the correct spacing goes a long way to making happy, healthy plants. So it really is worth the time to invest in thinning. A lot of gardeners have a hard time with the concept of thinning because essentially you're taking some really beautiful little baby seedlings and you're killing them, which I definitely understand. But if you don't thin, you're sacrificing the entire planting, because if I didn't thin these carrots out today, I wouldn't get nice robust roots, which is really what I want. And I'd have to go buy carrots from the grocery store, which is what I'm trying to stay away from by planting my carrots. So in thinning out a percentage of your carrot planting or your radishes or whatever you're thinning in your garden, you're preserving the integrity of the rest of the crop. So it is a really important task to do. Now, armed with all this information about why thinning is important, how to thin, when to thin, I hope you go to your garden and get to thinning. As always, we hope that this was helpful information, and we'll see you later. Bye. Okay, should I put the carrot suit on? feel bad making you guys stay here just filming me as a carrot.